Okay, Mark, we're in week 2 of the project at Lambton School. Can you speak a little bit about, now we're in the second week, what difference you've seen from week 1 to week 2, and anything different that you may have added or taken out or challenged with the teachers?
So, acceptance of the video being filmed, totally cool with that now with the teachers as the apprehension's gone. They're starting to see it as actually a very valuable tool, so they're actually quite keen to look at it now because they're starting to look beyond just them and their tone of voice, etc. They're starting to look at not just what they're doing but the behaviour of the pupils, so that's great. The awareness of actually starting to apply the principles and being consciously aware in the moment is improving. It's different at different moments, but the choices they're making in the class to follow the non-negotiables. 2 teachers have agreed that and they've been applying them with the group. Another teacher has got that next Monday just because of the way the timetable is. But the recognition of that it's all about the behaviour first, and understanding behaviour is not a bad thing, behaviour is just the actions we take. And also the conscious recognition of now we're starting to check long-term recall at the beginning of the session, how much actually is going on and how much we're now realising isn't, and how then we're having to review the level of content we're putting on the sessions to get a learning with understanding response as opposed to just ticking boxes. So there's some real serious awareness going up with those elements within the second week.
And you said that you highlighted the teachers are more comfortable with the cameras now, and that's clear to see. What challenges have they come with you? You spoke about a few challenges, but can you hone in on, other than setting the parameters and the recall and stuff, is there any particular challenges that arose this week that didn't arise last week? Because I think some of those things were surfaced last week. Is there anything completely new from scratch?
Well, now we're getting into that point where the awareness of shifting your own autonomous behaviour is starting to come in now. So when obviously the first week gets fresh, there's a lot of heavy thought and reflection going on. So although we've said you need to be comfortable being uncomfortable, actually the mind very conscious of doing these things. So already now what's starting to happen is, because they have an autonomous way, and we're saying now we recognise sometimes we need to change how we're communicating, how much gap we have when there's silent moments for reflection or these type of things. It's not the revert back to the way they've been self-practiced, the autonomous way. So now we're into that point where we're saying, I'm back in my comfort zone again. I've got to be mindful of actually doing this and not continuing to do what I've done before. So that's the bit now we're starting to hone in on, is acceptance of, in the moment of, it's not the teacher that should be managing the class, it's the class that should be managing the class. So am I using the appropriate principles to facilitate pupils managing the class, or am I reverting back to the quick fix of the teacher managing the class?
And you talked this morning to one of the teachers about connection, that the pupils have to connect to what the non-negotiables are, or what they define, what the pupils have defined as unacceptable. Can you talk a little bit about how important that connection is in order for that principle to be successful and for the teacher to really get something back from the class?
So this is a challenge we've had every sport and every organisation I've ever walked into. Is a lot of people do, as we discussed before, about values, principles, non-negotiables, whatever we call them, at the beginning. And then we don't follow them through or make sure the connection is always there when they start falling to unacceptable. So now we've got to make that connection with, if we've done the non-negotiables, if it starts to fall unacceptable, we're using the rule of 3. So we're recognising, does the pupil recognise themselves and make the changes? If not, do fellow pupils, the peers, recognise it and help them change, influence effectively? If not, number 3 steps in, but number 3 doesn't step in and start controlling the non-negotiables in the head. At number 3 now the teacher has to be, okay guys, remind me of the non-negotiables that you agreed. Okay, so what do we need to do different in this moment now? As opposed to, come on guys, make sure we do this. So it's important that we continue to make the connection with the non-negotiable because they need to own it. As soon as we stop doing that and we start to attempt to manage them internally ourselves without making a connection, now it's owned by the teacher again. which is the whole point of doing it, was to get the pupils self-managing, self-reliant, empowered. So this is that connection that can start to be missed a little bit. It's almost revert back to, I've got to sort the problem out, as opposed to, oh, pupils agreed this, reconnect them to what they said they were going to do.
And that's been very evident in the one-to-one meetings with the teachers. They're having these moments that when they watch themselves back in the video, right, this is me leading it again, I need to actually facilitate them to kind of connect with their non-negotiables. The rule of three seems to be a common principle that they're all using. How do you feel are they all at the same place, or some using it better than others? And can you give an example of a teacher who's doing it better than another, and another example of a teacher who's still struggling with that rule of three? Because I think listening to all three teachers, that's really something they're all in favour of, and they all really like that too.
Yeah, well, I think it's one of those things. Sometimes a rule of three, everyone sees value in it, but sometimes it naturally falls into some teachers' styles easier than others.
Right.
So we've got a point now where one teacher fits perfectly with the way she's already teaching, if you like. So this was a nice parameter to allow her to do what she already wanted to do. So she's constantly using it the whole time, and it's up there, it's out. She's actually got it on the wall, she's printed it out, she shared it with them.
Yeah.
Whereas we've got sometimes other teachers that see the value in it, but are so in the moment of attempting to fix the problem, they're not recalling, hang on, the rule of three should be an overt share. Am I using it in the correct method? Remember, rule of three is used in two approaches. One is for behaviour, but the other one is in learning or misunderstanding. So one is, okay, behaviour's not right for me, I'm going to change based on pre-agreed. Pupils then help me if I'm not, then teacher has to step in. But the learning understanding is, a pupil's not quite aware or can work something out. Right, I'm going to then, if I've done everything I can, yes, I'm going to ask for help from the pupils around me. Can they help me? If they can't, then I ask the teacher. So it's one of those things that sometimes that's a bit of a patience shift with some teachers, because they're going, well, I've always sort of dealt with the problem, I've been in there, bang, bang, bang. And the rule of three is all that thing about, well, I'm last resort really, I'm there as a supporter. So this is where everyone sees value in it, but people's natural style of teaching, it slots in easier than some others. So we've got a bit of a mixed bag at the moment in week 2. Some are more focused on other things. And it's just that thing about what sits comfortably, or what are the things I need to be mindful of to ensure I follow it through. Yeah. And that's where we are at the moment, just that new skills, fitting them in.
And I think that even comes out, I've noticed you with the teachers this week, you're asking them to do a hot review in the moment, or right after the lesson. And then later on when they review the video, it's used more of a cold review. Can you talk a bit about that process and what's come out of that process this week?
So the principles of hot and cold reviews are, hot review basically means is in the moment, straight away, we want a reflection. So how accurate are on actually what happened, baseline about what you saw and what you felt with what you did and what the pupils did. Now I do that because I want to see in the moment, before watching a video, before sitting down and relaxing and letting it rotate around in your head, what you're actually seeing in that moment. So we hit that, and then once we go through the method of, now you've got time to think about it on the tube going home, or wherever it might be at lunch, now you've watched the video, now you may have picked other stuff up that actually may be influencing your reflection notes. So here's the thing, if I don't do the hot review, what I'm actually getting is, I'm getting a reflective thought based on some external data, i.e. the video data. So I'm not getting a true picture of in the moment, what did you think? So the aim is, if we've got 2, we can get them more aware of. Our aim is actually to get the hot review as accurate as the cold review, but in the moment be more aware. So one of the challenges we're going to have with a lot of coaches and teachers and mentors is sometimes they're not aware in the moment of the choices they're making, and how can they, this is nailing it, this is working, this is not, this is how I adapt, this is how I respond to this in the moment. So what you'll find is they'll naturally go through what's autonomous, which may be great or may not be great, but without thinking they just, in this situation, automatically they go into this type of response. We want to get to the point where actually in the moment they're more conscious of making different choices, so not just reverting back to the old one. So the hot review is almost a progression to get them a little bit more aware of what was actually going on in those moments. So it's almost, although it's not stepping in during the session, it's as close we can get to identifying how accurately can you recall the session you just had, as opposed to once you've sat down and thought about it a few times and watched the video.
Yeah.
So this is why it's really important I do too, and it's always they go first. What I don't want to do is influence their thought by me making suggestions after the hot review. So you'll see a lot of mentors or assessors or observers, they'll observe a session. Some of them may ask, okay, so what did you think? It may be a very short fix, and straight away that person's there in the external is putting in suggestions. Well, now I can't do a cold review because now I've negatively interfered with their opinion. So I need to say, I want what you're seeing, what you're thinking, hot review. I then want it in cold review without any impact from me. Okay, based on that, now I know what you're seeing and thinking and feeling. We can discuss, challenge, question where we are, and then we can raise awareness of things that are missed. But at least I know what they're seeing and thinking. And I think that's really important for independent growth. Otherwise, we slow that down by actually influencing before we actually know what they're thinking.
And the hot review, for that skill of hot reviewing in the moment for the teacher, that also can happen during the lesson and not just directly after the lesson, is that correct?
Yeah, so there's times when, if it's appropriate in the session, and there was a session I did a few days ago where there was moments in the session where I caught the eye of the teacher and I could see things going on that possibly missed based on the principles he said he wanted to do, so then I can have that little whisper in, okay, just review what happened there. Very hot review, very quick. Okay, have you thought about this? And sometimes just go, remind me of your purpose. Okay, what did you just do? To allow them in that moment, go, okay, it's this. So, and there's been a couple of them where it's almost, I've just inhibited what I wanted to happen because of what I did. So that, so long as it's not interfering with the delivery, it's just supporting the growth, because this is a journey, then I think it's really effective to do that.
And with the hot review, that's where you want to get to, correct me if I'm wrong, if they can hot review themselves in the moment, during the moment, they can impact the next action they will have or the next thing they will do in that lesson, which will bring them back to their critical outcome or whatever they established as success in that lesson.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same as what we want to develop in the pupils. Yeah. It's the same methods in the teachers. We want them to be self-aware, self-regulating, but self-aware, self-evaluating, self-reviewing, live without emotions. So making good calls in the moment to allow them to adapt or recognise when something magical is happening. Okay, how can I continue this? What can I do with this moment? As opposed to letting it happen, missing opportunities for adaptation or continuation, and then at the end thinking, I wish I did that. Or actually not really knowing what they're doing because actually they're not aware in the moment. So we want that pupils to be doing that as well, whether it's based on choices in behaviour or actually choices in wanting to challenge a teacher, question, ask for help, ask for understanding of things, and not just let it happen and then afterwards go, I didn't quite get that. And how often does that happen in classes?
Okay, moving on from the classroom environment, let's say, but still within the school, I introduced you this morning to our Learning Support Centre staff who deal with primarily behavioural issues in school and emotional needs of the kids. As an introduction, can I ask your thoughts and opinions about how these principles could benefit those mentors and the pupils they mentor?
Well, if you think about the whole philosophy we're talking about is non-context specific, and what I mean by that is the philosophy is always about empowering people to be able to make good choices, execute with intent, and continue to self-evaluate. So all we do then is we upgrade the knowledge and skills based on that. If there's a process where we're saying somebody in a group environment, for whatever reason, the teacher should be using those principles, and for whatever reason can't quite have the impact they want with someone else, they're then going for a one-to-one with a mentor, if you like, which is these group of guys.
Yeah.
The principles don't change. The principles are still okay, so my aim is to make myself redundant, so have an impact to influence a person, so unsupervised, in the moment they can make the right choices, execute with intent and self-evaluate without emotion. So actually, if we're in a situation where the teacher themselves within the group can't deal with something for some reason, then taking them somewhere else, which is the group over there, their aim is always to make themselves redundant. So that can have an impact. So actually I'm seeing that person less. And that's where the principles apply the same. It's just on a one-to-one basis, you've got a bit more time to actually deal and make the connections. But if it's teacher can't handle, let's just push them over there, and then all they can do within the time is deal with the moment of the issue, and then they cool them down and let them go, then that's not really helping the pupil. So it's almost a case of supporting them in the same way as we're the mentors, in the same way as we're supporting the teachers, of giving them strategies and support, one, to understand how to influence better, but also systemically have a real strong connection with the teachers and the mentors. So the teachers understand what the mentors are doing, the mentors understand what the teachers are doing, and this is where the methods we're using already, setting non-negotiables, understanding its behaviour, performance, results, the synergy then between the mentors is a lot more aligned, because even the teachers are focused on how can I better influence, not judge people on past behaviours, judge people in the moment on what we can do, and is there been shift, is there growth? And then actually, if the mentors needed, working alongside very closely with them. So it's almost as if we're recognising teachers need support, but it's also recognising that mentors need support.
Yeah. How do you think they received your principles this morning? Because that would be their first time hearing about the principles that we're using with the teachers in the school, and the principle you've been using for the past 25 years. How do you think they received that this morning in that meeting?
I think it's always difficult to until people have been filmed and have self-awareness, we're taking it on what someone's saying. So based purely on what someone's saying is, they totally buy into, that is their role and that is the values of what they need to do. They totally get that actually the level of support they're getting to be the best version they can be, the same as we want with the teachers and the pupils, is probably they're on a bit of a self-discovery down there, as opposed to getting external support to help them grow as a mentor. So I think that's where they can really see the value of someone from the outside with experience coming in and giving them added value, getting them to see the things of the challenges and how they can have a greater tool set, if you like, to deal with the challenges that they're. But I think what they really liked is the connection between having an interdependent team. At the moment it feels quite a dependent team, that actually they're dealing with what the teachers can't, as opposed to the mentors and the teachers working really closely together to help influence the pupil, as opposed to being separate things.
And with your second week here, Mark, and being very familiar with your principles and continuing to try to develop them myself, I think it's becoming very clear that if the school is to really grow and maximise its capabilities, I think the staff need to be synergised with these principles really. And if we look at what we're doing at the moment with 3 teachers, and if we have synergy between them and the support staff, that can make a huge difference. But until everybody's on board, that same pupil is going to go back into another environment within this school that's potentially going to undo the good work of those principles that those 3 teachers and the support staff have used. So can you speak a little bit about the importance of a unified system within the school to maximise the capabilities of the pupils and the staff?
I think every organisation understands they should have a philosophy, a way of doing things and a purpose. And if the purpose here is that actually we want to maximise not just the qualifications of a pupil, but actually maximise them as a person, give them the life skills that they can take out and use anywhere, and even during their time at the school, in and outside the school. If we want to change a child's behaviour, it's going to be very difficult if we've got some evolution process here which is actually developing a behaviour shift, recognition, pupil managed, pupil empowered. And then the next lesson, they're going into a class which may or may not be that process. So it may be now it's teacher-led, it's teacher-controlled, it's teachers that may have an opinion of that child from past experiences, as opposed to looking at actually recognition of change right there. It's going to be very easy for a child to regress. You're going to have very strong children to actually make the connection in this class and continue that behaviour into another class that actually may not be supporting the growth of those behaviours. So this is where systemic change is the easiest way for growth, is recognise our role, value and need, and then ensure that even if it's based on fundamental principles, every single teacher buying into and understanding this is supporting a journey of growth. So if we've got synergy in how we communicate and how we're managing our non-negotiables, this pupil is going to be far easier to understand, okay, so this is the environment of the school, not just of Mrs. Smith's or Mr. Jones's class. This is a philosophy of the school. It's not personality driven. It's not, oh, that I've got a personality challenge with that teacher or pupil. It's beyond that. We grow beyond that. We grow. It doesn't matter whether I like somebody or not. Actually, I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on, am I influencing them and assisting them on the journey of growth? And am I looking for that as opposed to thinking, well, this is this type of child, this is this type of child. And that's where it's massively important. And if we want real growth, we're investing in growth, making it as easy as the child as we can to grow is getting some continuity. Now we know sometimes we can't control what's going on outside the school, but with the hours we have in the school, that amount of hours of synergy, we are going to get some real big changes within a lot of the pupils. And let's not forget, we're not talking about just the pupils that may be seen as the problem children, as people may call them, the people that shout or argue with the teacher. We're talking about every single child. Are they self-motivated? Are they got good self-image? Can they manage and challenge if they're not sure of things? Can they be engaged in what they want to learn? Do they know how to do the stuff they need to outside of school to maximise their own value, growth and excellence? So some of the pupils that we think are okay, just not too bright because they're not getting great qualifications, they're disengaged in the class but they're politely doing it. Well, are we focused on them to help them grow, or are we saying, well, that's the type of child they are, so therefore they're just not bright? Or are we saying, have we done everything we can to engage all children, and is there a support between every teacher to ensure that that is a continuity with no conflict? And this is where making the connection of a principal in a school is far more powerful than having some teachers that are really driving this philosophy, but without the support of the other classes that that child may go into.
That answer there is our meeting with leadership team after Christmas.
Yeah, and I
Because
think
you've nailed everything there very succinctly and quite powerful actually, and it's very much the bones of what we want to do. It's the meat of what we want to do.
And I think every teacher in this school, if we sat down and said, why are you here? What is your purpose? You come, it's not the best paid job, so you must be doing it for a passion.
Yeah.
Is why we're here. If we're here to get the best out of children, I think everybody would agree with that. But if we look at it beyond just the fact of qualifications, if we're looking at it beyond as a person, as the type of behaviour, in good behaviour, in choices, in open to communication and challenge, helping each other, helping themselves, everyone will buy into that. What sometimes we don't have is understand the mechanics to make that happen. Do we know the mechanics? Do we know the systems in place? Have we got the support for the teachers to do that? And indeed, have the teachers got the training and understanding to deal with those challenges? And that's the key.
That's the key. The last question, the last thing I want you to discuss, and you just give me this thought with your previous answer. Very often it is a relationship dynamic, whether that pupil will accept that teaching or accept that communication from that teacher, or whether they will dismiss it. And it is very often, I can say that as a teacher, very much relationship based. I can't help but think, if we are all on board with the same principles, the relationship between the teacher and the pupil, regardless of who the teacher and the pupil is, will naturally evolve anyway, because of the consistency with the approach of that teacher across the board, or that mentor, or any member of staff, should it be, if that's the case, be it a ground staff, canteen lady. I can't help but think that those principles would help build that relationship naturally and potentially break down some barriers that some pupils have with teachers currently.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, look at a lot of conflict people have. Is conflict sometimes is we don't know where the conflicts come from because we're not aware of, well, what actions am I having that's influencing the pupil? What actions are the pupil doing to then re-supporting the actions I've just had in a negative way? So sometimes it's just looking at understanding beyond the fact I don't like them, you know, the personality, which might be a byproduct of the behaviour, is do we know what we're doing that actually is influencing the behaviours? And once we start getting that clarity, the non-negotiables, the value of why we're doing things, and following through, being consistent on what we said we both agree, totally builds the rapport there, because then you get respect that isn't respect that's forced. You get respect because somebody you recognise they're doing as much as they can to help you, as opposed to attempting to control and think that actually the person needs to respect them by looking in their eyes, or by just agreeing with everything they say, or just being obedient. It's a whole different approach, and it would have a massive shift in what I would say is respect is not a forced process. It's actually understanding value of people. Pupils understanding value of all teachers. Teachers understand value of all other teachers, mentors and pupils. And that's a different mindset. But unless you've got the skills and the awareness to know what you're looking for, it becomes very difficult. Then challenges occur. Then teachers, they're humans, they get emotional. Then that starts to build up, and then they start to make different filters on different students. So you may end up with a student then that has had a bad experience with this teacher. All of a sudden they may do something slightly wrong, the teacher's seeing it. You might have another pupil that hasn't had the negative experience before, might do the same thing but just isn't picked up in the same way. So it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of, I knew they were going to get it, as opposed to what's the source of it, the reasons why, okay, what can we do now to draw the line and say that's the past. It's about moving forward, what we do today, you know, what can we both do and agree that's going to allow us to get the best experience within the time we have together. It's those type fundamental techniques that it's just going to make it so much easier for the teachers. And if it's easy for the teachers, it's going to be so much easier for the pupils.
Less confusion.
And less stress in the classroom. You know, that's the whole point. They're very busy teachers. So they go from one class to the next class to the next class. If it's a less stressful time in each class, it's going to be a lot easier day for them. They're not going to fatigue as much, they're not going to be as emotionally driven. Very difficult to be cool-headed, calm, constructive for all the time if you get into some real heavy, hard work in some of the classes. And you can get emotionally involved in these conflicts. So if we can reduce the level of conflict, it's going to de-stress the teachers, which is going to make it easier for them to deliver the principles we're talking about.